A Chinese quantum lab uploads an operating system and makes it free for anyone on Earth to download. That alone is unusual. What makes it worth your attention is that no one had done it before. And the company that did it, Origin Quantum, operates inside the country the West, spent years trying to lock out of advanced computing entirely. Origin announced Pilot OS 4.0 as a free public download, describing it as the world's first quantum operating system distributed this way. That is a company claim, not an independently verified one. Hold it there for a moment, because whether or not the superlative is precise, what Origin actually did is structurally stranger and more interesting than the headline suggests. Before you file this under Chinese public relations move or academic goodwill gesture, look at the mechanism. The more carefully you trace it, the less it resembles either. Quantum computing is still early. Most of the world's quantum hardware is experimental, cloud-gated, and controlled by a handful of Western companies. The dominant software layer, IBM's Qiskit, is open source but deeply wired into IBM's own cloud and hardware systems. No one had released a standalone, freely downloadable quantum operating system before Origin announced they had. That means the floor beneath every future quantum application was still unclaimed. And Origin, a company founded in 2017 that is one of China's leading quantum computing firms, just poured concrete on it. Two questions are worth planting now. First, that world-first claim. Is it real, and does it matter if it isn't? Second, a researcher somewhere outside China downloads this and gets back to work, not thinking about geopolitics at all. Something shifts the moment they do. We'll come back to what that is. And third, if the operating system itself is free, where does the actual leverage live? To understand why the layer matters, you need to understand what a quantum operating system actually does. Think about how you use your phone. You don't write instructions directly to transistors. You write an app, and the operating system handles the translation down to the hardware. A quantum OS does the same thing. It sits between the physical qubits and the developer, abstracting the hardware into something programmable. The layer in between is where the standard gets set. It decides what the application programming interface looks like, what the compiler expects, how circuits get scheduled and corrected. It is the foundation slab of the building. You can renovate every floor above it, swap out applications, upgrade your tools, but whoever poured the slab decides what can be built on top and at what angles. Can't developers just switch foundations later? In theory, yes. In practice, switching costs compound fast. Application programming interfaces change. Tool chains diverge. Circuits compiled for one abstraction layer don't port cleanly to another. The longer you build on a slab, the more tile is on it, and the more expensive it becomes to rip it out and pour a new one. So the layer matters enormously. Now ask who currently owns it. IBM's Qiskit is the dominant quantum software development kit, widely used, independently observable as the closest thing the field has to a standard. But Qiskit is cloud native. It runs best, often only, inside IBM's quantum hardware and cloud environment. It is open source in the sense that the code is visible, but it is not OS-level independent. You build with Qiskit, and you are coupled to IBM's infrastructure. Pilot OS 4.0, according to Origin, is a standalone layer anyone can run without IBM's cloud behind it. Now, is Origin's world-first claim accurate? No independent body has confirmed it. What can honestly be said is narrower. No major Western quantum company had previously released a comparable standalone free OS download before Origin's announcement. That is a smaller claim than world first, but it points in the same direction. The floor was uncontested. Origin walked up and poured it. So why free? 3 reads, and only the third one is the real answer. The first is goodwill, a research gift to the global quantum community, a bid for scientific credibility, plausible optics, But nobody gifts a strategic frontier out of national kindness. Governments don't fund quantum research for years to hand the results away. The second is developer recruitment. Draw engineers into a Chinese quantum ecosystem. That explains adoption, but it doesn't explain why you surrender the operating system itself rather than keeping it proprietary and charging for access. If the goal is just users, you can do that without giving away the layer beneath. The third is the real mechanism, and here is how I read it. Whoever's operating system becomes the default sites beneath every future quantum application. Not above it, beneath it. You cannot charge for a default you haven't established yet. Free is the price of installing a standard before Western rivals can lock theirs. Android didn't beat Apple's mobile software by being technically superior. Google gave Android away to hardware manufacturers for nothing, and within a few years, the floor was poured under most of the world's smartphones. Google owned the ecosystem above it, the App Store, the search, the data. Origin is running the same logic one layer down, in a technology that doesn't have a dominant platform yet. The earlier in a technology cycle you pour that foundation, the more durable it becomes. Now trace what actually happens the moment someone downloads it. A researcher in Germany downloads Pilot OS 4.0. They are not making a geopolitical statement. They are solving a quantum problem cheaply. But their application now speaks Origin's application programming interface. Their workflow assumes Origin's compiler. Their future hardware procurement has a default answer baked in. They laid tile on Origin's slab without asking who poured it. That is the floor working. No confirmed public adoption figures exist for Pilot OS 4.0. That is an honest gap in what can be verified. But the mechanism does not depend on any specific number. Platform lock-in is documented across every major technology transition. The longer a slab is down, the more tile accumulates on it, and the harder it becomes to move. Zoom out now to the larger structure this responds to. The United States export controls on advanced semiconductors, Nvidia graphics processors, extreme ultraviolet lithography machines from ASML, electronic design automation software, were premised on a specific logic: keep China downstream. Keep it a consumer of foreign platforms, dependent on Western foundations. If China cannot access the most advanced chips, it cannot build the most advanced systems. The ceiling stays out of reach. Origin's move reads as an attempt to make that ceiling irrelevant. Instead of climbing toward what the West controls, they went underneath it. They poured a floor at the layer where quantum computing standard hasn't been set yet. Quantum hardware is still early enough, and the software standard still open enough, that the floor was available. The embargo tried to keep China a taker of foreign platforms. A freely distributed operating system is one way a taker attempts to become the platform others build on. Whether the attempt succeeds is a different question, but the direction of the move is a deliberate inversion. Here is my honest read, and I want to be direct about where the evidence actually stops. The triumphalist version of this story, China has already captured the quantum software layer, the game is over, runs well ahead of anything verifiable. Pilot OS 4.0 has no publicly confirmed adoption numbers. Origin's quantum hardware has not been independently benchmarked as world-leading. No verified independent comparison of Pilot OS 4.0 against IBM Qiskit at the operating system layer exists in the public record. The claim that the strategy has worked is not one the evidence supports. The dismissive version, this is a minor software release from a company most Western engineers have never heard of, misses the mechanism entirely and mistakes obscurity for irrelevance. My read is this: free is only leverage if the ecosystem outlives the giveaway. If Origin sustains development, attracts contributors, and builds compatible hardware beneath the operating system, the floor holds. If funding contracts If Western rivals release competing free standalone operating systems, if the quantum market takes another decade to mature at commercial scale, then free was just expensive. There is also one real limitation that doesn't get discussed much. Distributing Pilot OS globally may expose Origin's architecture to non-Chinese developers who study it, extend it, and potentially improve on it elsewhere. Open floors teach everyone who walks on them. But here is what neither the hype nor the dismissal says clearly. The Moat was never the operating system itself. Free the operating system, and the Moat becomes the ecosystem built on top of it. The trained developers, the applications, the hardware compatibility relationships, the update dependency chains that accumulate over time. Once the slab is down and the building goes up, the floor becomes nearly invisible. That is exactly when it becomes most powerful. The embargo tried to keep China from reaching ceilings the West controls. Origin skipped the ceiling entirely and poured a floor. The question now is whether enough building goes up on top of it before anyone else lays a competing slab. Here is what I want your honest read on. Does the free operating system move, create durable leverage, or does it burn capital and seed rivals without ever producing a moat that holds? Both sides are real. I want to know which you find more convincing and why. Drop it in the comments. If you want to follow how this actually plays out, who adopts, whether Western rivals respond, and whether the floor holds, subscribe, because that is exactly what we are tracking. Somewhere, a developer just downloaded a free quantum operating system and got back to work. They were not thinking about any of this. That is the point.